Okay, here we are, G4 Guitar TV. Sorry for the slight delay in starting. Something to do with Google Hangouts, and the invite's not working for some reason. There's probably a few people who are trying to get in, but we will press ahead anyway, and hopefully they will catch the replay or the live version. So what we're going to do today, I've got a couple of topics that we're going to cover, and so what I'll be looking at first of all is that I've had one teacher want to talk about kind of an issue that he's having with one of the adult students or adults of children, and what we're going to talk about here is communicating a message to adults. And the email that I saw, the parent was really not wanting to be treated like a child. I think it's kind of the wording that they put there, and you guys can add to this and throw in comments and tell me if you want to sort of add your take on it. But first of all, let me just start with looking at this problem as it is, and that is treating parents as adults and not children, and just understanding how they see things from their point of view, because we've really got to get this balance between remembering that there's a teacher-student relationship, and even if that adult is a parent of a student, then we still need to be able to communicate with them in a way that they understand that we're asking them to do something for their own good. It's not for us. We already can play guitar, and this is the point that I make. A lot of the time is I can play guitar. I already have been through this. This is about you, and this is about your learning experience. And what we want to do is make that experience as easy and as enjoyable as possible, and ensure that you actually get what you've come for. You've come here, as the advertising says, the reason that you're here is to learn to play guitar, and so my mission is to teach you to play guitar. And that often takes communication, and it takes an understanding of human psychology and what makes people tick, because we all have this, and if we talk from the adult point of view, we all have this kind of child inside us that doesn't like to be told what to do, it doesn't always take advice well, and doesn't always respond to the advice that we give them. And this is where our job, the difference between your average teacher and great teachers, is the ability to communicate your message and get a positive result. So a student is actually happy to take the advice, follows the advice, and is not going to sort of resist it or be offended by the advice you give. And there is a fine line. You can very easily step over that line and say the wrong thing. You can very easily come across as condescending or arrogant or a know-it-all. And what we want to do is understand that we are in that position as a teacher of obviously needing to know what we're talking about, because they're paying for our professional advice. And so we would, ideally we want them to take that advice, but they won't always take it. So what I'll do is I'll just sort of throw it out. I'm just going to bring Joachim into the conversation here. Joachim, I know that you have a situation like this, or recently you've had a situation. Can you explain your situation? We don't need any names. Just wanted to sort of get a bit of an idea of the situation, if you could explain it in your terms.
Yeah. So the problem was with well, it was first of all with the payment. So I sent it through an email with the payments, and then I called them on the same day that I started the group lesson, where they said, yeah, we will pay you when we get there. And I went through the PayPal subscription with them, and they couldn't make the payment because they had some issues with they needed to use they didn't have the password to log into PayPal. So he said he would do it tonight, that he would sort it out with his wife, and it didn't happen. So then I called the next day, she didn't answer. She said, send me a message. And I asked, did you receive the email I sent you? But she didn't respond to that. And I called the next day, and then I didn't get any reply. And then next day after that, and then he called me and complained that I was harassing them, or how to say, yeah, they didn't like that I called them on a weekend.
Right. Okay. Yep. And so this happens because we end up with this situation where there's an underlying objection, and that's what we sometimes haven't gotten to. And the sentiment, and I saw the email, and the sentiment from the email is that, hey, you know, all you care about is money. You're chasing us for money. You don't trust us. As if we're going to do a runner or something. I think was the word, the term that they used. So there was this real feeling of, you know, kind of not happy about the whole situation, this mistrust, and them even coming at you with business advice and saying, look, we run, you know, very successful businesses. We know how to run a business, and therefore you should run your business like we do. Now, you can see that what happens is that it quite quickly can end up into a situation where they're angry, upset, you're angry, upset, people are offending each other, and it just doesn't end very well. So we can look at this, and we can, and I know you're great with this stuff, so I know that you're not offended, and you look at everything from, you know, you try and look at every angle and understand, okay, what could I have done better and differently? Because we've talked about this a lot of times, and I know that you're very good at this. So we don't want to go to them and sort of say, hey, they're wrong, they're bad, they shouldn't behave that way, they should behave this way, because people are people, and people will behave and react to different situations in different ways. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody is going to be it doesn't mean that you're always in control and you can always change some situations. People have a lot of other stuff going on in their lives outside of that. Perhaps they've got some business troubles. Perhaps they've got some personal troubles. Perhaps lots of people are chasing them for money. And you were just that person who made that final call where we've just had enough. You know, stop ringing us. And these are often symptoms. You can see that something is not going well in their life, and that they're kind of projecting this out to you. Now, they may very well have a good case as well. They may very well feel that what you were offering was not really what they were looking for and wasn't up to scratch. It wasn't what they perceived. So the thing here, and this is the very strong point I'm going to make, is that whenever we deliver anything, and this is really from a sales point of view, that we need to understand what people are expecting, because you can only, what we want to do, the ideal is exceed people's expectations. When you meet people's expectations, they'll be happy. That's fine. They're good with that. And I'll go to the airline industry, because the airline industry is one of those industries that's an ideal one to look at for this, because it doesn't matter which airline we fly with, we pretty well get the same experience. We have this thing where, you know, we expect to board our plane, you know, we expect to go through the drill of, you know, how to put your seatbelt on and what to do in an emergency. We expect the flight to take off around the time it's due, maybe a bit late sometimes. We expect it to arrive at this, you know, we have this kind of expectation no matter which airline we fly with, that it will be the same experience. But there are a few airlines that exceed expectations. There are a handful of them. And those particular airlines are the ones who actually make the most money. They actually hold the majority of the profits in that business, and it's a very low profit business. Almost every airline that exists today either makes no profit or is losing money. Many of them get bailed out by governments. I was reading, you know, with the news at the moment with Malaysian Airlines, apparently they've been bailed out by the government 3 times now. And they're really on their last leg. So there's an airline that may or may not survive. And the reason the government bails particular airlines out is because often they represent the country. They bring a lot of tourism in, and so even if the airline's not making money, they still want to do it. But my point here is that we need to know the expectations of people, and then we need to exceed those expectations. So we, as teachers, what we're trying to do is give them the best possible chance of learning guitar, because ultimately we're going to be judged by how many students succeed at learning guitar. That's what's going to be the measure. So even if you taught a lot less students and you did a very good job, that would be great for your reputation. But if you grow your business and you can do it for a lot of students, even better. But let's just drill down here a bit and try and get some background on this, because the feeling that I get is that they weren't happy about something. They weren't happy about maybe the value they were getting from the lessons. There was something else underlying this, and that's why they were holding back on the payment. These things are sometimes even subconscious, where they're sort of messing around, they're not answering your calls, they're saying, we'll pay next week. All these kind of little delays are really symptoms of a problem to do with their satisfaction of the lessons. So let's just go down. How long have they been learning?
They did the 5-week lessons, and then straight after they went on holiday for a month.
Okay.
And then they came back after that just to start the group.
Okay, so they did the 5-week intro. Now, in the 5-week intro, when they first enrolled, they paid on time, no problem?
It's a good question. I'll try and think back.
Okay.
I'm not too sure. I don't know. It's because it's like 2 months ago.
Okay, because what we're trying to find out is where the problem may have started. What are the possibilities here? So if from the very first phone call there was a bit of skepticism there, they're thinking, oh, I don't know about this, and perhaps as we offer, we recommend is give them a money-back guarantee. In other words, pay the $99. If it doesn't work for you, give the money back. Now, the way that I always looked at this intro was that $99 wasn't my money. It was simply a deposit put in a bank account that I was holding on their behalf, and now I had 5 weeks to prove to them that their $99 was well invested. So if you kind of take that point of view, then you're not going to be feeling that, okay, if they want their $99 back, or I give it back to them, that it's, I've somehow lost something. Think of it as an opportunity where they're putting $99 aside, you're putting it aside in your bank account, holding on to it for 5 weeks to the point of where they're satisfied. Now, how did the 5 weeks go? Can you think of anything within that 5 weeks that perhaps didn't go as well as it should have? Are there any clues in that 5 weeks?
Let me see. I think what I got from, because I didn't teach those lessons, but I understand that he was quite keen to, like, they were enjoying it, and they were practicing. But maybe one thing was because it was the mother that brought him for lessons, and when I called her when I arrived from holiday, she said we haven't had a chance to practice on the holidays, and I don't want the teacher to how to say, to make be mad at us, or because we didn't practice. I just want to make sure that you tell him that to not be nice when they come back.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So, and how did you respond to that?
I said because they did. She told me that they had tried to rent a guitar, but that they couldn't. They wasn't able to because of the short period of time or something like that. So I said, okay, well, it's a holiday. It's difficult to. It might be difficult to practice, but it's okay if you someone to get back into it and start practicing again when we get back.
Yeah. Okay. And she was okay with that? She seemed happy?
Yeah. Yeah, she was. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So they came back after. So they had the 5 weeks intro. Everything seemed to go okay there. They were happy with that. Then they went away for a month, and then on the return they came for the first lesson back. How many lessons did they have since they've been back?
Just one. Just
one lesson. Okay. All right. So in that one lesson, they turned up for the lesson, but they still hadn't paid. Is that correct? They
That's
hadn't.
right. Yeah. But they said they would pay on the lesson, which we went through it, but then they didn't get a chance to they didn't have the login details, which his wife got. So he said he would do it the same day, an evening.
Okay, all right. So when they came for that first lesson on their return, there wasn't really much discussion about the money. Is that right? You just kind of got into the lesson, and then the time went by, and then you followed up the next day, or when did you?
When the lesson was, then I went through it with him, and he was doing it. He was setting up the subscription, but it didn't go through.
Was that, or was this? When was this?
While the lesson was going on.
Oh, while the lesson was going on. Okay. So he was trying to pay the subscription during the lesson. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Okay. And then, all right. So, and then at the end of the lesson, that hadn't worked. Something happened. What happened? He couldn't password it or something. Is that right?
You need to have the login details. So he said, "Oh, that's probably my wife. So I need to get her to do it tonight."
Okay. Cool. All right. So it looks like he was making a serious attempt to pay. So there was no problem there. And judging by her email, it looks like she was kind of somehow offended at some point of, hey, this guy's just chasing money and not trusting us. It's like, we honestly tried to pay, and now you're harassing and hounding us for the money as if your whole business is going to collapse if you don't get our money. And she got this feeling of desperation that you were, seriously chasing the money. And that's obviously not what you were trying to portray. You were just trying to get it done so you could move on to other things. So what happened? You called them after the lesson?
I called the next day.
Okay. Yeah.
And she couldn't. She sent me a text message saying she was at an event or something. She couldn't talk. It was very noisy. I sent her a message back saying, okay, no problems. I just wanted to confirm that you received the email I sent you regarding the payments. And she said she didn't reply back to that.
Okay, all right. So she might have been having a bad day. She might have been in an event where she was under a lot of pressure, and the boss was there, or if she runs her own business, other things were happening. So that's all very possible as well. And so it could have been just a bad timing. But with the kind of response that she gave in the email, it sort of led me to sort of think that you'd rung her several times or texted her several times. Did you follow up again after that?
Yeah. So I used the you sent me once you send me a strategy to if people don't contact you or respond to your messages, to call the next day saying I need to speak to you as soon as possible. I call the next day after that and say, I'm sorry, we can't continue lessons. If you want to retain your lesson, call today.
Okay, all right. So we have to sometimes be a little bit flexible, even though there's a system in place, and you do want to try and follow that system as a general rule. You do need to be flexible as well. You do need to feel it out. We know with everybody's a little bit different. It's the same with when you're looking at practice or you're looking at getting certain students to do things, operating in your groups. Everybody's a little bit different, so you need to sort of apply a certain amount of pressure at certain times and release a little bit, and it's a dance. And so really we can drill down on this, but the bottom line is that you probably weren't picking up on something there. That these were people who were perhaps honest, straight up people who generally were happy to pay, but they had problems logging in at the time. And then the next day, it was maybe she had a big thing on. She was just very busy and hadn't got around to it yet. And we all know that. We all understand that. And that's why we're trying to get them to subscribe. So hey, you don't have to worry about it anymore. We don't have to go through this every month or every however many months. This is something we can do once and we're done. So it's worth being a little bit patient and not remember you've had it for 5 weeks. They were away for a month, which is an unfortunate gap, but that happens. and they've come back for one lesson, and then you're now ringing them every day to get the money. I would have given a little bit more room. I wouldn't have been too concerned, because it's really not a concern unless I felt that these were the kind of people who were just taking advantage, that they'd been coming now for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, they hadn't paid any money, they kept making excuses and delays, and I just felt that they weren't really going to commit to what I'm doing. So rather than drag it on, and I know that I get a feel, you know, sometimes I get that with G4 teaching members, you know, they'll email me, you know, 5, 6 times asking me lots of different questions. How do you do this? How do I set up my business like that? And I realize that they're not going to sign up. That all they're doing is trying to get as much information as they can until I sort of say, well, hey, you know, I can't keep providing you with free information. Either you join or you know, and I know I just get to that point where I know it's either going to happen or it's not. And in this situation, I don't think that is. They already paid. They already did the 5 weeks. They've returned for that new lesson, and they really genuinely sounds like they tried to set up the PayPal subscription there on the lesson. So I would have definitely given them a little bit more room, a bit more flexibility. So that's where I feel that there's been and this is experience. You will get this. The more you do this, the more experience you get, the better you will get at it. And it's interesting that, you know, I was just reading something the other day about how our brain actually, the way that your brain and a younger brain, even a teenage brain, is actually bigger than my brain. My brain is actually shrinking. I have a smaller brain. I have less neural connections than you do. Being in my 40s, you being in your 20s, what happens is that the brain actually goes down. But what happens is, as we get older, the quality of my neural connections are better than yours. They're stronger, and that's what happens as you age. Is the neural connections get stronger, and the reason they get better is because our brain is very clever in that it starts to prune back any of those neural connections that aren't really valid, that aren't useful. So even though you have a lot more, it's a bit like a guitar player who has a lot of chops. You know, they can play a lot of different things, but they're not very good at any of it. It all sounds pretty average, or it all sounds the same. I'm not sort of saying that's you. Just giving you the younger brain. It's not as developed, where you take the older, more experienced player, maybe doesn't have as many chops, plays less material, but plays it with a lot more feel. You know, they're a lot more in touch with it. And this is how the brain actually works, because if we go right back to childhood, to when you're a young child, your brain from 0 to 5 is in its best time for learning a language, and it has the apparatus there to learn a new language. But that disappears. For us to learn a new language as an adult is actually very difficult, because our brain has gotten rid of that apparatus, because the way that the brain has evolved is we need to learn a language to communicate with our environment, but that happens in the first 5 years. Once we've done that, we no longer need to be taking up valuable brain real estate to do that job. So how this relates to your business and what you're doing is that with each experience, you're actually increasing those neural connections and that wisdom that you have. So now you've experienced this with this particular student and parents, and it can be a little bit painful because you've lost a student, a bit frustrating, but you take that experience and you will now transfer it to the next situation you'll see that situation arise again, and you'll now be aware of it. So this is really important, but you can actively move on this, and this is what I talk about all the time, and this is why taking notes, this is why having you joining these hangouts and us discussing these particular situations, we can work through these, and I can take my years of experience and hand it to you, and that helps you to leverage and learn much faster. You actually, I already know how far you've come, and even though you may not see it so clearly, I see it very clearly. I see that you are where I was after about 10 years. You know, and you've been doing this for, you know, a year and a half, you know, maybe 2 years soon. But I see the difference where you are compared to where I was after just 2 years of teaching, and that's massive. And so where you're going to be in 5 or 10 years from now, because you're going to get older, you're going to think time flies. Things are going to move forward. You're going to be 5, 10 years from now, and you will be so much better. And not only will your business have grown, but you will have grown. Your experience and your knowledge will be so much further down the track that you'll see it. And that's where that's why we like teaching, is because often when we look at our students, we go, hey, I remember being where you are. It helps us to get perspective. I remember struggling with that. I remember being at that point. So that's really what we're doing here. Is we're doing the same thing. So. Okay. All right. So somebody is trying to call me. So does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. Just one question.
Yep.
So in regards to calling them, should I waited a week, or what's the time frame I should have waited perhaps?
I would have just waited at least another day, and I would have sort of. It's hard to know because I'm not there, so my instincts are what really carry me through these situations, and I don't always get it right. And this is the thing, is that the way that, and I'll just sort of go a little bit more into this just to help you understand, is that they've made this machine that thinks like a human brain, that they're trying to develop to actually behave like a human brain. And the way the human brain works is that a computer works on precise, perfect. So when you ask a computer what's 2 plus 2, it says 4. It knows instantly the answer. There's no oh, it could be 5, it could be 7, it could be 9. There's none of that. It knows instantly it's 4. The way the human brain works is it goes 2 plus 2. What could it be? Could it be 5? Could it be 3? Well, actually, no. 2 and 2 is 4. So the brain actually makes these kind of errors and assumptions, and like we can look at a better example would be look at a distance. You could say, how far is that particular car away from me? And your human brain will say it's 500 meters roughly, whereas a computer will measure it exactly and say it's 492.3 blah blah blah, recurring to the 100th decimal point. So that's the difference between a computer and human brain. And if we get it wrong, maybe we're going to get run over by that car if we don't judge it or crash into it, whatever. So this is the way the human brain works. And so when we're talking about this particular situation with this student, I will just make rough kind of, or you will as well, we all do assessments on how to deal with this situation. And where you've gone to the system and you've looked at the system, okay, I'll follow the system, you now know that system, even though the system is okay, it's not precise. It's not going to work on people, every single person, every time in the same way. What's going to happen is that this time you've called it too early, you need to sort of let it go a bit. So really, I would just have got a sense with this particular situation, that when you talked about, say, the father trying to make the payment, that would have made me feel, well, they're trying, and I'm not that desperate for the money. I don't need the money today or tomorrow. But if I got a sense, hey, I'm not sure if these people are really keen to go through with this for any reason, I probably would ring the next day, but I wouldn't ring for money. I'd be ringing to ask them, I just wanted to give you a call to see if you're still okay with the time, joining the group, whatever was my kind of red flags for why is a student perhaps, balking, not paying, or not 100% happy. That's what I'd be looking for. But in the case of this, if I had run the next day, what I try and do, and this is one of the things that I would do when making money calls, is that I don't ring up or text or even email asking for money. What I do is just simply try and get in contact with them first. I reestablish the connection. So I would have just rang this particular lady and just said, hi, it's David here from G4 Guitar. I just was trying to get a hold of you. If you could just give me a ring back when you get a minute, that'd be great. And leave it at that. And if she doesn't call within 24 hours, I'll ring again and say, I'm not sure if you got my message. Just David here again from G4. Just still trying to get a hold of you. Just want to have a quick chat to you. So I'm not asking about money on the phone. All I'm doing is, now if she avoid, if I've made 3 calls and I'm still not getting any responses and it's been almost a week, that's when I will sort of say, look, I haven't heard from you. I've sort of run out of options here. I'm going to put the lessons on hold until I hear from you. But I still haven't spoken about the money. I'm still not asking for the money. Not until I get a hold of her and get a feel for where she's at and what's going on will I start. Because the money is always a sale. Whenever you're asking for money, it's a sale. It's their money. They're in control of it. They decide whether or not they pay you. Just because they've come for that first lesson, it doesn't really give us the right to say, okay, you owe us money. And that's what a lot of teachers do. They sort of have this thing, well, you turned up, you took up my time, therefore you're going to pay me. And it's like they're really pressuring for this, to get paid for this one lesson. And some people will pay and go, well, there you go, there's your money, I never want to hear from you again. But that's not what you want to achieve. What you're trying to do is build a long-term relationship, and you're trying to help people to learn guitar. So it's not worth, whatever you're going to charge, $30, $40 for that lesson even. It's not even worth getting that money for the bad kind of vibe and reputation and word of mouth that you're going to get out of that. You're better off saying, look, I understand, no problem. If it wasn't for you, that's cool. Look, I hope everything works out for Johnny. Keep the folder in the book and enjoy. And if things change, let me know. So you always want to, at the very least, because remember, marketing is expensive. Getting new students is an expensive exercise. So you really want to do this right. All right. Cool. Now, let me just to help pull in, I know Ben can't talk because his microphone's not working, so I'll just bring in Adam for a minute. Adam, have you had a situation like this at all that you can speak of?
Where someone didn't pay?
Yeah, where you had to chase them or they were offended by you chasing them? Anything? Any kind of ideas or advice you could give along these lines?
Yeah, I think so. It's taking me a second.
Yeah.
Trying to think.
Well, let me put it like this. What
yeah,
do you do?
Yeah, I did have this situation. Yeah. That was when our government over here shut down. You remember about that?
Yep.
Yeah. So I almost lost them because they were like, "Oh, we don't think we're going to have the money anymore because we lost the thing." And I just was like, "Well, when did you want to? When could you afford to make the payment? I see that you want to stop. When can you afford to make the payment?" And they said, "Oh, we could make it at this date." And I was like, "You know what? Why don't you just come for your lessons? I won't even charge you for them. And then when it comes time for you to sign up, for that day, then you can pay me." And I let them do that. So I basically just gave them two free lessons. But they've been with me now for a long time. So it paid off. Like, yeah, I lost $40, but now they've been with me for a year now. So it was quite worth it.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic example. And because you saw the opportunity there, and people, it's amazing how often I speak to not just guitar teachers, but generally people in all sorts of businesses, and they don't offer, they don't understand this concept. And this was a concept that I guess I learned years ago. But Jay Abraham, who's from the US, he's one of the best teachers on this particular subject, and I really recommend that you check him out if you get a chance. But Jay Abraham really, even though I kind of believe this in myself, and I was doing it because I'd come from a sort of a early retail background about giving people lots of value and really servicing them and building that relationship, and how long term it really, really pays off. It's really like any relationship. If I go into a situation of, your wife, for example, if you're really good to her and you do good things, you buy her flowers and you do things on her birthday and you're kind to her, you generally do these kind of things. Guess what? When you make a mistake, she's going to be a lot more forgiving. She's going to sort of say, well, look, his heart's in the right place and he's really a good guy. But yeah, okay, he forgot my birthday this year. He messed up. But that's not normally what he's like. So whereas if you're trying to, at the beginning, trying to get, and that's what people mostly in business try and do, is they're trying to nail a sale right from the beginning. Then that comes through, and then that often tarnishes the relationship right from the very word go. So what we want to do here is that and I do, as you know, I talk about things. I had a guy recently who was looking into G4, and he said the one thing that stops me from doing. What's that? Oops, no, can't hear that. The one thing that stopping him from joining G4, he said there was a couple of little things, but one of the main thing for him was that he couldn't bring himself to give refunds. He just said, no, I don't believe in refunds. So it was like I couldn't really, and I sort of explained it to him a little bit, but he just didn't get the concept, and he just saw that. And he was giving free trial lessons, and he just felt he'd give a free trial at the beginning. And I talked about how if you give a money-back guarantee, then you're going to bring in students who are actually serious about learning to start with, who are willing to pay. So you know what you're dealing with from the beginning. So you're not going to be spending your time on people who are not willing to pay, who are simply looking for a free lesson. But also you're giving yourself more chance, and you're backing yourself. You're really saying for $99. If you put up $99, I'll give you 5 lessons. If it doesn't work out, I'll give you money back. And that money back guarantee, again, that's something that I got from Jay Abraham, but it was something I learned long before him. But he really put it into kind of in terms of understanding for me, so I got it. And the thing is that when you offer a money back guarantee, especially in those early stages, then what you're really doing is setting up, or even what we're talking about here, being a little bit lenient with their payment, being a bit flexible in the beginning. What you're doing is really setting up a trusting relationship. You're saying to them, look, I trust you, and I'm willing to let you find out about what I do and how I do it, and then hopefully that'll be enough to convince you. But either way, if it's not, you'll know and I'll know, and then we don't need to go on with it. So it's really a tough concept for a lot of teachers to get, and as a result they miss out on business, and they miss out on these long-term students, and finding good students as well, which is really important, is getting those students who are going to who really want to learn. And the example you gave there, Adam, here's someone that you gave them a little bit of space. You said, okay, I understand you don't have a job at the moment, come for the next couple of weeks and I won't charge you, and you were showing that that's what you were willing to do. You were basically going halfway with them on their experience. You were going, well, I'll give you a couple of free lessons right now because you don't have any income. That must be tough. I understand. So let me give you a couple of free lessons so your lessons don't stop. So you kept it going, and when obviously things went back to normal, they were then able to pay you again, and here they are a year or so later. So yeah, great example. Okay, so I think we've covered that topic. Now, does anyone have a question? Anyone else have a question? And Ben, if you have a question, you can type it in if your microphone's not working.
When you hire a teacher, do they have to be G4 certified as well? Like, do they have to go through the process with you?
Sorry, say again. When
I'm hiring a teacher right now, I'm training him. We just wanted to make sure that he needs to get a certificate that says he's certified.
Yeah, he can go through the training, and once you're happy, and we only want to give him a certificate once, he or she, a certificate once they actually have started teaching groups, and you can see that it's working. So okay. You don't want to be too quick to give them a certificate. Okay. Yeah, great. Okay. And yeah, just let me know when that time comes, and I'll make you one up.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? No. Ben says here. Okay. No. All right. Okay. So let me move on to the next topic that I've got here, and that's, which kind of leads off the other one, but this is running your business almost like a science experiment. And this is when I took this in my early years of business and teaching, I took it quite seriously, and I would get annoyed and frustrated and stressed when students cancelled lessons or didn't turn up or didn't practice or didn't progress, all these things that kind of get to you, and perhaps that's just my personality, but I wanted it to be perfect, and it was very frustrating. But then I don't even know where I got this idea from. I'm probably reading a book years ago. But I started looking at what I was doing from more of a point of view. What if I was a science lab? If I was a part of a university and teaching was just an experiment, where I was just looking at how to teach and what worked and what didn't work, and these were just like lab rats. I was just saying, okay, let me try this, let me try that, and see what's working. And what it did for me was it not only improved my teaching and my business dramatically, it actually put me in a much better, happier state, because I was no longer attached to the expectations. And a scientist who's attached to the outcome of their experiments can often shift the results and be biased about what they're looking for. And as good as science is, this is one of the weaknesses of science, because we all have bias. So when they're running these experiments, they actually need to try and be detached from the outcomes of their experiments. So when you take this approach to your business and your teaching, and we were just talking about your situation, looking at this purely from almost an experimental point of view, looking at the behavior, of these particular parents or students, and looking at it, okay, how did this happen? Why did it happen? Like a forensic scientist, and then how can we make this better, or how can we improve it, or how can we tweak this, or what can we try next time to make a difference? So what I want to do is just see if we can go through some examples. I can give you obviously examples that I've done and where this has really worked, but I want to see if you guys have any examples of where you would like to run an experiment. In other words, take a bit of a risk, go outside the boundaries of what you're normally doing, and find out and get some results. So I'll go to you, Joachim, first. Can you give me an example of something that you would like, if your teaching studio was a science lab, what experiment would you like to run?
In like anything, or can it be?
Yeah, anything to do with obviously your business and teaching guitar.
Yeah.
But what's something you would love to know, that if you could run an experiment where it didn't matter, that this was in a hypothetical world, and it didn't matter what you did, as long as you're not hurting anyone or torturing people. But an experiment. Let me give you an example. This might help to spur on. I wanted to know early on, years ago, whether or not a practice log made a difference or not. That was the experiment that I wanted to run. So what I did was that and this was before G4, by the way, is that I just selected certain students randomly to fill in a practice log, and I did it for, I can't even remember how long it was, but it was quite a few months. And I noticed the ones who were using the practice log seemed to be more confident. They seemed to be improving at a faster rate, and they seemed to enjoy the lessons and enjoy showing off what they were doing. So that's where it sort of started to become more obvious to me that there's something in the practice log. I already had before that examples of teachers, but in experiments where a teacher is using the practice log with all their students and another teacher's not, you don't know whether it's the practice log or whether it's the teacher that's making the difference. I then ran this experiment again, obviously, when I started hiring teachers with G4, and I could see, I was watching, and the teachers that seemed to be having the problems were the teachers who weren't using the practice logs, who kind of somehow, they were coming up with all these excuses and reasons. The students don't like it. It's sort of disruptive with a lesson because of constantly having to check practice logs. I feel like I'm policing the students too much. All these kind of reasons and excuses that they gave, and so, but I was able to see that the teachers who were strictly sticking to the practice logs were having very few problems, and their students. See, students will often resist the practice log early on, but once they're onto it and they know that's part of the way you do things, they just accept it and move on with it. They don't sort of keep labouring the point. But if you show a little bit of weakness towards the practice log, well, try and use it if you can. Okay, you didn't get to use it this week. Then they will start to go the other way where they won't use it at all. But that was just an example of one experiment. So have you got anything that you would like to know?
Yeah, actually we're doing something at the moment. So we're having so every week there we have just 2 skills we will do like all through the week. So in the checklist, you just go, okay, this week is scales and rhythm. All the way through the week, we just do the same 2 skills, and then
Yep.
The idea is that it's less thinking of what's going to do or what I'm up to, or it's just like going through those skills. It's more focused on that.
Yep, fantastic, excellent. That's a great example. So yeah, just get them to focus on just 2 skills the whole week. So don't worry about any of the other skills this week. All I want you to do is do, say, scales and rhythm, nothing else. Just switch between the 2, and let's see. Let's do that for 3 months. With the other students, carry on by rotating all the skills. But with these students, each week you can do 2 different skills each week, whatever. But just do 2 skills for a week, and then next week do 2 skills for that week, and see the difference. That's a great experiment, and I'm looking forward to hearing the outcome. Okay, cool. So you can see it's fun. It turns your lessons into something much more interesting, because it's not just about, hey, trying to sign up students, trying to make as much money as possible. It's about running experiments on the best way to learn guitar, and that's what's going on in the world today. Is that no longer are these experiments exclusive to university science labs. These experiments are going on all around the world, or in all different places, and this information is being fed back into the system. And that's what I saw with G4. Right from the very beginning with G4, G4 was always going to be an experiment. What we're always going to do is be looking for what was the best way of doing things, and it's all about the 80-20. Why should we be wasting all this energy on something that's not really as productive as this 20% over here? Here, there's the 80%, here's the 20%. Let's focus on the 20% and get results much sooner, much faster. And this applies to every level of your business and teaching. It applies to what you're talking about earlier with the parents. What is the best way to communicate to parents, to get them to what's the best way to get people to sign up for PayPal quickly and from the word go? What's the easiest way? All these kind of things. That's what we're constantly looking for, and to improve our business. All right. Now I'm just going to read out what Ben's put here to bring him into the conversation. Fine for now. Thanks, Joachim. Joachim, you might be interested in a pattern I've been telling my students to follow. Practice picking at the beginning of every practice. Yep, great, which is part of what we do. After the lesson, practice the 2 other skills we worked on in the lesson. The day after, practice the 2 different skills. The day after, practice the last 2 skills. The remaining 4 days should be spent focusing on the skills you're furthest away from achieving in the checklist. Okay, great. So Ben's doing something slightly different, which is more to the G4 formula, which is great. But it'll be interesting to see. I want to hear the results of your experiment, Joachim. I want to hear, how that works out. Run it for a couple of months and get students to exclusively focus on just 2 skills for a week. Don't do it with all your students. Just do it with some, and just see what happens with those particular students. If the experiment looks like it going the wrong way, don't stay with it too long. In other words, you don't want to lead your students down a path where you know it's not going to work. Once you see those signs, they've been. I was reading, not long ago, an experiment where they were testing people for a different kind of diet or something, I think it was, and they found that one diet extended people's life or health, and the other deteriorated, and so they didn't keep on with the experiment after a very short period of time, because it was just not right for these people over here. It was like, no, you guys have got to get onto this diet because we know this works. So that's what you're trying to do as well, is once you start to see things working in one way or not working, then you don't want to continue on with it. Okay, so I'll go to Adam. Adam, what example can you give of an experiment that you'd like to run, or that you have run or are running?
I don't really have any at the moment. I can't really think of anything right this second.
Okay, it'll come to you. It'll come to you, no problem. But this is pen and paper.
The goal is like getting your students motivated, keeping them motivated. So whatever we're doing, if we're to be successful, has to keep them motivated. So I worry about the two, where Joachim wants to do the 2 skills all week. The students could get, I worry that might get bored from that, but
yeah.
But I don't know. I don't really have anything new.
Well, that's cool, because that's part of the experiment, and that's where I would run it for a week and say, how did it feel just doing 2 skills all week? Was it boring? Did you find that you couldn't focus for very long? Talk to me. Tell me what happened. And this is what you're trying to find. You're trying to find information about whether or not it worked.
Right on.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing here with let's sort of expand out and come up with some ideas of. I'll go through again some of the things that I did as far as experiments are concerned, and how if I hadn't have run those experiments, then I wouldn't have not learnt what I know today, and I wouldn't have developed the method to the point where it is today. So it's really important to run these experiments. And what most teachers do is they don't actually run experiments. They make assumptions on what they believe works, and they stick to it. Or they go with whatever they learned from their own teacher or their own environment, and they stick to it. And this is why private lessons are so predominant in the community, is because people assume private lessons are better. They don't actually have any evidence, and most of the people who are saying that private lessons are better are saying it from a point of view, well, all I've ever done is private lessons, or I tried group once and it didn't work. So that's not an experiment, that's not science. You need to test and try and look at different options and see what works and what doesn't work. And I wouldn't even say that private lessons are better than group or not better than group, or group's better than private or not better than private. I would just say that it depends on the way that you run your lessons. There are teachers who are excellent private teachers who would make terrible group teachers, and then there are great, fantastic group teachers who would make terrible private teachers. It really depends on the situation, and there are lots of different things in place, and that's where the kind of the scientific basis here of understanding what works and what doesn't work, and testing different things allows you to find out what does work and doesn't work. Now, what I would probably say with Joachim's experiment is that it may work for some students but not others. That's my guess, is that you'll find some students will respond well to it. They focus very nicely on just a few things to think about, where other students will get bored and restless. So it just does depend on, I think it'll depend on the student, but let's see what happens. Another thing that you can experiment with is time. So how long should a student focus on a skill for? So let me just go around you guys. I'll start with you. How long do you think a student should focus on one skill for when they're practicing? In a practice session.
10 minutes or more.
It probably varies with age, but let's talk about, say, a typical teenage adult. You say, how long should they practice their scales for in one sitting?
So I would say 10 minutes or more.
10 minutes or more? When you say or more, what's the or more?
Well, maybe 10 minutes. That should be enough.
Okay, 10 minutes. All right, cool. All right, so Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, if it's a 30-minute session, 10 minutes. If it's an hour, 20 minutes, depending on how the practice session.
Okay, cool. All right, so 10 minutes is agreed, and I would agree with that as well. 10 to 15 minutes is about the focus that most students will have. And when they've got, and I've tested this on myself, of course, but there's lots of different ways to test it, but it seems that from the studies that I've read that 10 to 15 minutes, that's the focus that we have. After that, we start to wane. So really that 10 minutes is where you get your best out of it, and then the next 5 minutes or next 10 minutes even, it's actually of about half, and it's sort of sliding down. So the quality of your practice is, that's where you have a warm-up, spend 10 minutes just warming up, doing some, picking exercises, etc., and then focus on your scale or a scale for 10 minutes, and then stop, have a break, 30 seconds, 60-second break, and then go for your next 10. Even jump up out of your chair, and I think this is important as well, is that when we're sitting and practicing a lot, that you really need to get up and out of your chair every 10 minutes. You need to sort of shake it out, get your body feeling good, and then sit down and then start again another 10 minutes. And this is really what I found is worked, and it's amazing how, you know, I went to quite a few teachers. I had no teachers tell me anything about this. Not one of my guitar teachers, I had over 30 teachers over the period, not one of them, even my best teachers, told me how long to practice. And I don't even think they knew. I don't think they really had the information back then. And what we know today, because of fMRI, the scanning that they do while you're learning, and all these kind of experiments they run, they've got a much better idea of what actually works and what's the maximum time that you should be spending on an instrument. So we know this, and you guys came to obviously similar conclusions, and it's probably been spoken about somewhere, but this is what we know, is that so when we're recommending to students, make sure that you're telling students that as well, saying that, you know, you should, based on our understanding and our research, spending 10 minutes on a skill and then shifting is the ideal. If you want to spend longer on that skill because you feel you want to sort of take it a bit further, that's fine as well, but really try and keep it within that sort of 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the most is what I would say, because you really do start to lose a lot on the other end of that. So 20 minutes max, 10 minutes is ideal. So Adam, do you have another experiment? Can you think of something?
Yeah, just now. You know how we warm up the right hand at the beginning all the time?
Yep.
Yeah, you know, we do the picking exercises. Are you guys familiar with the John Petrucci left-hand warm-up?
Yeah, I know from his video. Is that what you're talking about? Or?
That exercise he does?
Yeah.
Where he puts the 4 fingers and then he
works on.
Yeah, maybe coming up with like an easier version of something like that so we can warm up the left hand as well, not just the right hand.
Great. Yep. So you could run that as a, you know, do it with some of your students and see if it helps, see what difference it makes, and that's where, again, it may depend on the student, it may depend on what they want to, you know, be able to do. But yeah, I think it's very valuable. I think, to me, not even as an experiment, I think really it's something that we could incorporate into G4, having that left hand warm up as well as the right hand warm up. Is that what you're kind of suggesting?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm all for that. The way that I sort of, you know, when I laid out the G4, is you look at the skills, it's really swapping from right hand to left hand, and you know, and also looking at the things that are the most important, prioritizing as well. Chords. If you look at most guitarists, the majority of the time they're actually playing chords. Sure, there are certain guitar players who play, you know, Satrianis and whatever, who play a lot of runs, but the majority of people who pick up guitar pick it up to play chords to accompany a singer, or to accompany themselves, or to be the rhythm guitarist in the band, or to play a song, which we know in most songs the solo is only a very small part of the song. The majority of the song and the majority of what you play, even for the most sort of dynamic player, chords are still a big part of their playing, and that's why chords are the second skill, because this is the one that you're probably going to be using for 80% of the time. So that's the left hand. The right hand is the picking. Let's get the right hand picking warmed up. Let's get the left hand, the chord. Let's go back to the right hand, or combining both hands really, through arpeggios and scales, and that's bringing the 2 hands together. Because when we're doing chords, isolating the chords, it's not actually about the right hand. When we're learning a chord, it's all about the left hand placement, because a chord is stationary, as we know. It's just bang, just about getting the fingers in place. So that's where the left hand comes into it, and the right hand. But adding to the warm up, extending the warm up, like you're saying, using sort of a Petrucci idea, yeah, I'm all for that. I think it's a great thing to add on, and I will note it down. Okay. So, any questions? If you've got any questions, feel free at this point. So, what we'll do is that, because I'm going to extend this out to the end, so we've got about another 10 minutes. So, the idea is that to really run these experiments and to look at, I want you to also run it on yourself and your teachers, if you're hiring teachers. You want to see what they're doing and what's working and what's not working. So when you're constantly looking at it as an experiment, if you think about, if we go to sports teams, and sports teams are one of the best places to look for improvement, because these guys are playing with millions and millions of dollars. They're at a very high level. The hundredth of a second, just shaving off just that little bit, can be the difference between winning and losing. And we know in any sport that the difference between first and second is huge. It's sometimes it's the difference between a career and not having a career. It can be the difference between millions and millions of dollars. I think they did something with golf. Tiger Woods, who at the time of the reading anyway, was the #1 golfer in the world, and he earned something like 5 times more than the #2. And you win a PGA. The prize money for #1 is at least twice as much as #2 usually, and these are the kind of things that we often miscalculate. Is that the difference between being just a little bit better is dramatic in terms of results. So if we look at 2 guitar teachers, one guitar teacher can be slightly better than the other because of something they're doing. But that slight difference can mean that teacher has twice as many students or retains their students for twice as long, just that small difference. So if you like, let's drill down, because I've been running these experiments for many years and been watching teachers as well as being a teacher and observing myself and looking at the differences between what makes most teachers, I'm talking, the greater percentage of 90%, and that sort of 1 to 10% of teachers who actually get up there in the top level. Let's drill down and look at the differences. And one of the main differences that I found, or one of the first differences, there's quite a few. One of the first differences that I found is that great teachers have this ability to connect with people. So they are able to understand that having a connection, a personal connection with each of their students, some kind of connection. It doesn't even have to be a personal connection where the student, they know the student that well, because we see this with pop stars, we see it with politicians, where people feel that they really like that politician, they really know that politician, and so they feel connected to that person even though they've never met them before, and that happens all the time. So the outcry for when a celebrity dies. You guys aren't old enough, but I remember when I was a kid and Elvis died, and my mum was an Elvis fan, and so was just about every female in her generation, and the outpour of emotion. So you don't even know this guy, you never met him in your life, and here you are in devastation and tears. The same happened when Princess Diana died. The emotional fallout from this was just incredible. And this is what happens is when we're emotionally attached to somebody, they don't necessarily have to be emotionally attached to us. And this is what I found with great teachers, is they have this ability to bring this connection between them and their students. And being able to do that, really, it was the next question was how? How did they do it? How do they make that connection with their students? So I want to throw it out to you guys and just ask and see if I can get some ideas and some clues from you. How do people do it? How do they connect? What's one tip that you would give for people to connect to, say, teachers to connect to their students?
Maybe find out what ask them more like what I like to do, or like something that's not related to guitar, perhaps. Find out what they do, what the hobbies are, and what what do they do on the week, during the week, the weekend, or yeah. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, great. So you can connect to most people when you take an interest in them, and an interest that's beyond guitar. Guitar is a great place to start. Music is a great topic to talk about with your students generally. But if you can find out a little bit more about them and what's important to them, and especially with kids, because even though they want to learn guitar, a 6-year-old kid, a 7-year-old kid is not necessarily bouncing off the walls to be a guitar player. Some are, but most of them it's just another hobby, another idea that they came up with or the parents came up with. So, but in their case, maybe they really like, take my daughter for instance. She loves the movie Frozen, and you only have to talk about the characters in Frozen, and she immediately connects to them, and so what happens in the human brain is that we have these images and emotions connected to certain images, and when you bring up those images, then that emotion naturally flows behind it. So by talking about those things with people, talking about what's important to them, what they like, and what triggers emotion is what's going to get them into that state, and then you become part of that. And so they make an association to you, a good association, because you're someone who brings up pleasant emotions for them. And that's really what it's about. It's about bringing up emotion in people that they actually feel good about. And if your students come to you and they actually enjoy and have a good time and feel better about themselves and feel more enthusiastic generally about life and whatever, they're more likely to go home and practice, because they have this connection with you, because they like you, they want to impress you, and they want to stay connected to you, so they want to become part of your world. And if your world is all about guitar, then they become part of that world and they want to do it. And that's what happened for me. My two main music teachers inspired me, not from the point of view of what they taught me so much as the way they were as people. I really connected with them. I really wanted to be around them and learn from them and be a part of their world. And that meant playing music. That was really what it was about for me. And so that's I understand that from both being a student, but also from being a teacher. So fantastic. Adam, what would you say about connecting?
Conveying that you really believe in them as a student, even the younger kids, that you really believe that they're going to succeed, and just really filling them up with that feeling that you believe they're going to succeed, they will succeed. And just being excited for them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Keeping them motivated. That's how my best teachers were. I remember the best teachers I had that made me want to practice were I could tell they believed I could be successful, and then the teachers I didn't like were just harsh and like, oh, these students are like crushing you. You know the difference. You know what I mean?
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. They believed in you. And I think above everything else, I think you really hit the most important point, and that is that when a student knows that you believe in them, that no matter what they're struggling with, whether they're struggling to play a particular song or execute a particular skill, or even get enough practice done, if they know you believe in them, then they will step up and believe in themselves a lot more. Totally. An example that I often give was that I had this student years ago, and he started off learning guitar with me, and he was just one of these students, one of these kids who, on the surface, appeared very lazy. You just thought, this kid just doesn't want to practice. He just wants to turn on the TV, lie on the lounge, and stay there and never move. And so it was kind of in the beginning, I remember, and this was at the time a great experiment for me. And he'd come in, his mum would come in, and she would be a bit frustrated, saying, look, it doesn't seem to be, he doesn't really want to practice, etc., etc. So I thought, how do I get this kid to practice? And I remember looking him in the eye, and there was this turning point, and I'm saying, you have so much potential, because you just based on the little practice that you've done in the last 6 months, and this was 6 months he'd been coming to me, and he managed to learn a few things, and I said, I'm just blown away by how much you've learned with so little practice. Imagine if you practice, you just have this huge potential. And it was quite an emotional thing, and I could see he was actually welling up. His eyes were sort of, and he was like, couldn't believe, because he had this low self-esteem. He didn't believe in himself. And that's what I realized, that the reason he wasn't even trying was he just didn't think there was any point. He didn't think there was any reason to practice because he wasn't going to go anywhere anyway. And this is often an underlying part of laziness, is that people think, why bother trying? Because I'm just going to fail anyway. I may as well just, do nothing. It's better than setting myself up to fail. And I remember this conversation, and this kid absolutely transformed. Now, I'm not going to take full credit for it because I think there was a turning point for him as well. I think he was just getting to this point where he was looking for something. And that's often when students come to you, they're looking for someone who'll believe in them because they just don't have enough in themselves to believe in themselves. So if you can turn the situation around by believing in them, then you increase the chances of them becoming successful simply because you're showing that belief in them. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. I'll add one point as well here so we can finish up. The other thing is to reveal yourself. I think, and you guys know that I do this all the time. I talk about my own experiences. I talk about what I've been through. I don't say, hey, I was born with a guitar in my hand, I was gifted, and the gods from above, magically possess me with this ability. I still feel like I'm halfway to where I really want to be. I still feel like I'm a student and have a long way to go. I never feel that, hey, I've achieved, I'm there. I still feel much in the same position I did when I was probably a teenager. It's just that my perspective is different. I'm happy with my progress, but I'm still realize that there's a lot further that I could go, and a lot further that can be done, and that really never changes. But by revealing these kind of situations to my students, letting them know that I know where you're at, and I've been through this, and I feel for you, and I still go through these things, that I'm only human like you are. This, when people see you as real, that you're not just some guy sitting up on a pedestal, or you're not some guy who just who's too afraid to show that you have weaknesses as well, then you will struggle to make that connection. We see it again in I'll go to American politics. I'll use both, two examples. I'll use Australian politics and American politics. In America, President Clinton had a situation with his daughter who was, I think, on heroin or something, and that situation, I can't remember exactly what happened. You guys in the US know better than me, but there was a situation emotionally for Clinton that happened, and he almost broke down on camera or something. But that shifted the polls for him. That made a big difference because he exposed a real person, a real to himself. And that was one of the things, and I was there in the Clinton era, and I remember the thing about Clinton that made him so popular, even with the controversy around, we won't go into it, the Monica thing, but he still managed to gain a huge amount of popularity because he exposed himself as a real person, and people could see the weakness and flaws in him. He wasn't trying to be Mr. Perfect. And we had the same situation in Australia, where our most popular Prime Minister ever was a guy named Bob Hawke, and his daughter was, I think, a drug addict or something like that, and he broke out into tears on camera. And again, the polls shifted hugely in his favour. He always come across as a guy who people felt that it was just another bloke, another Aussie, and just like us, just trying to get by in life and make good. So he really related to the general public. So one of the things, it's not about going out and exposing yourself and all your weaknesses and making yourself look like you've had this terrible life. It's about just revealing about your own struggles in learning guitar, and about who you are, and that you are a real person. And so I think that having that as part of your teaching and part of who you are, be a bit more honest about who you are, and being a bit open about your situation and your history, then you will make stronger connections with people, and you'll get more of that kind of community feel, and you'll get a lot more support from people because they'll realize, hey, you're just one of us, you're a real person. So does anyone have any last comments, last questions? I think we've covered some good ground today. Anything you want to add? Okay, cool. Okay, well, we'll leave it there. We'll be back again for those of you who will be around tonight. I think Ben will be there. For Adam, it's probably the wrong time of the day. So yeah, so I'll see you in about 9 hours. Okay, guys. Thanks very much. See you soon.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, bye.